history of encaustic comes out of the ancient Greeks. They were using wax to just kind of repair and fill the joints of their ships, which then led them to start putting decorative imagery on their ships out of wax. And so the idea of how the Greeks were using it, how the Egyptians were using it has always been something that I'm interested in. Encaustic has to be applied to a porous surface. So I work with solid wood surfaces. I will start off my work with layers and layers of wax just to get it to go into the wood. It's almost like how an acrylic painter might prime their canvas before they start. The term encaustic technically means to burn in. And so for every layer that I put down, I have to heat that layer so that it bonds and grabs the layer underneath. So there's that component to it. And I use torches and I use heat guns to do that. Maybe 4 or 5 layers into it, I'll embed a map into that. And then from there, I continue to build more layers of wax. I'll have different types of things that I'm thinking about from one body of work to the next, but I would say that one thing that tends to be consistent throughout my work are map shapes. Underneath the layers of wax almost always are actual paper maps, which people don't typically use anymore. And then I'll start my imagery. I work primarily with 2 types of waxes. One is 100% beeswax. And so this is how I typically get my wax. And this comes out of Deer Creek, who makes honey out in London, Ohio. And they sell it in these really large slabs. And then I'll often be gifted or find other types of wax, but it comes in so many different forms. And then the second type of wax that I use is something that's called R&F encaustic medium. It's also beeswax, and what it looks like inside of that package are these little pellets. There's a little bit of resin in there, and this is the wax that I use to make my color. So to make color, I work with, and I'll try to pull this out and see. I work with all of these jars of dry powder pigment. This would be the type of pigment that any artist making any kind of medium would use. And so what I do is I melt the medium and then I sprinkle in however much of the pigment that I want in terms of the color. When it's cool, I can pop it out of the container and have my own dry, cooled cake colors. And then I usually apply that with a brush. And then once I've applied it with the brush, then I'll take a torch to it to burn it in. I tend to work, I would say, more on an abstract side of things, but I do have imagery that's identifiable in the work. And so another common theme for quite a while has been orchids. And I use them as symbols of strength. I use them as symbols of resiliency. I'm really interested in the idea that orchids are thought of as these sort of fragile, delicate flowers, but in actuality, they exist almost at every climate on Earth, and they thrive in almost every climate. And so I'm very interested in that idea. And then I have been taking those orchids and pairing them with abstracted images of female anatomy, kind of pairing this idea of strength and resiliency with the female anatomy. And again, it's a little bit coded, it's a little bit on the abstract side, but for me, there's a lot of political implications that are happening with that imagery. I have some paintings where I'm really thinking about Greek mythology. There's kind of a silhouetted image of a siren. So a siren is half woman, half bird, and the story is that they have these beautiful voices that seduced the sailors to want to, find out who they were and what they were, and they crashed into the cliffs. So there's an image of that, and then there's a target image. And so I'm thinking kind of more about this idea of focus. And so the sirens are really kind of like doing their own thing, focusing on their thing. And then there's this place in the target that looks like it got smashed, right? And so for me, that's the ship smashing into their creative act that they're in the middle of. What inspires me tends to be a lot of different things. I have been working with encaustic for about 20 years, and I have different bodies of work throughout that time frame. And my ideas will change over time, of course, as many artists do, but there are some things that remain consistent throughout that time. And most of what appears in my work are these map imagery, and they're actual maps that make up kind of the ground of the work, and then I build on top of it. And so from those maps, I'm thinking about shapes and line work that follow what kind of movement I'm making throughout the day. So that movement might be just sort of a routine from home to work, to the gallery, to the studio, or it might be a special trip. Through texture and through color and through placement, through the composition, I refer a lot to earth and sky, and I'm very interested in how one is looking at the sky and at the earth themselves when they're moving throughout the day, but I'm also interested in how the viewer looks at art and my art, and I want it to be something that causes them to pause and really look at what's being presented to them.